Okay, so next I just wanted to talk a little bit about mortgages. And as I mentioned before, mortgages really are one of the main ways that people get into property when they're trying to purchase property. And the reason for it is because if you don't have a mortgage, then you need to have cash. And most people don't have the amount of cash to go out and purchase a property. And even if they did, it still probably makes more sense to use a mortgage anyway, because you can just have more access to the cash that you've got to do more things with. But I just really wanted to talk a bit about the mortgages and how they work. And I wanted to talk a bit about remortgages as well, okay? So do you guys know anyone who's got a mortgage, or your parents or anything like that?
Yes.
Cool. Excellent. Okay, so you probably know a little bit then. And if I am telling you anything you already know, do let me know, okay? But in general, a mortgage is a contract between you and the bank saying that they will borrow you this amount of money to purchase a property. And in order for you to be able to borrow this money, interest on, of which you're going to be paying them back over a period of time. So more often than not, a mortgage term is 25 years. However, you can spread that for longer. They usually let you go up to 40 years, as long as it doesn't go past your age of retirement. So let's say, I mean, I don't know how old you guys are, but let's just say for argument's sake, someone was 25 years old. If they had a 25-year mortgage, that will take them up to age 50. But the bank, let's just say, I don't know, they're going to retire at 65. The bank will let them stretch that mortgage for another 15 years because of that. So they can then have a 40-year mortgage, and that will potentially bring their monthly payments down. And although on paper it will look like there's way more interest to pay and it's a way longer term, the reality of it is you never have to keep the mortgage for 40 years, because you will go through something called a remortgage at some point. And in that time, you can then change your length of term to whatever you want it to be. So I always recommend that, you know, stretch your mortgage for as long as you can in the beginning to keep your monthly payments low. This is if you're somebody who's doing this for investment purposes. If you're just trying to own your own home, and your only kind of goal is to own a property, pay it off, and then have an asset there, then maybe 25 years is fine. But if you know that you want to be able to play around with property, pull money out, etc., then I always say keep your monthly payments low, and you can maximize on your income in other ways, which we'll kind of go into. So I hope that made sense to you guys. So just to talk a little bit about the interest then. So as I mentioned, the bank will give you money and add interest on top. Interest rates change all the time. So you can go to a bank today, you could go to a bank next month, and interest rates might be different. But as a general rule, you'll get some interest rates depending upon whether you're getting a residential or a buy-to-let mortgage, whether you're buying as an individual or through a business, which again we'll talk about as well, and also based on your credit. So if you've got good credit, you will always get better interest rates from than you would if you've got bad credit. And also, you might not be able to get a mortgage at all if you've got bad credit. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. Also, as a general rule, the high street banks will give you better rates than you would get from, let's say, a private lending company, as a general rule. So the better credit you've got, the more likely you are to be able to have access to some of those deals. So let's talk a bit about fixed rate and variable rate. So when you have your interest added on, or when you have your mortgage term, they say to you that you can have a fixed rate term or you can have a variable rate term. And what that basically means is when you sign your contract, they will say, let's say, for example, if you're on a 2-year fixed rate term, they will say to you that for these 2 years, this will be your fixed price. And then after those 2 years, it's going to change. The price is going to change to something else. So if you went onto a 5-year fixed rate term, then it will be fixed for the 5 years or the 10 years. So when you're getting your mortgage, you want to decide within yourself whether you want to be on a fixed rate term, which a lot of people do just out of security because they know how much they're going to be paying every month, or whether you want to be on a variable rate term. Now, some of the reasons why some people might go on a variable rate is because, well, they're risk takers. That's the first one. But also because they might have an insight and think that the market might change. So as an example, you might be on a fixed rate term, and let's just say you was on a fixed rate of 4%, and someone else might be on a variable rate and it starts at 4%, but then maybe next year the rates go down to 3 or 2%. It means that that person is now paying less on their mortgage, whereas the person who's on a fixed rate, even though the interest rate's gone down, it doesn't change for them. They have to stay on the 4% for those 2 years. So it just means that the variable rate person wins in that instance. But then, as you can imagine, it can go the other way. So the variable rate person, they might go up 2%, and then now they're paying more. But the fixed rate person, they're still happy that they're just paying their 4%. So it's all about really, I would say, insights into the market. But I mean, we never really know what's going to happen. And I think 2020 has proven to us more than anything that, you know, life's very unpredictable. So we don't know what's coming next. So somebody who was in property on a variable rate, just say, they, up until now, you know, you still don't really know what's happening next. You know, we don't know if COVID's a good thing for property or a bad thing for property. So yeah, it's just all about your level of risk and what you want to take, really. So then there's different types of mortgage. So you've got your repayment mortgage and you've got your interest only mortgage. So once again, as a general rule, the banks will prefer for you to have a repayment mortgage. And if you are somebody, as I mentioned before, who's just really in this to have an asset and pay off their mortgage as quickly as possible, then a repayment mortgage is probably the way for you to go. And all that basically means is that they will give you your fixed rate deal, and within that, it will have the cost of your property and their interest divided over the 25 years. And literally, you're just paying that off. That's all you're doing. Whereas when you have an interest-only mortgage, you're only paying for the interest. So it means that at the end of the term, you still owe the whole cost of the property. So a lot of people will say, well, why go on interest only? It doesn't make no sense if I'm still going to owe. I don't know if any of you lease cars or any of you own a car, but it's almost like the difference between HP and leasing a car. So with the HP, you know, you're paying a bit more, you know, but at the end, you own that car and then you could do whatever you want with the car at the end. Versus when you lease a car, you're going to pay less every month for it. But at the end, you can then decide what you want to do. So you can get a new car, you could give it back. It's a little bit like that. But the reason why many people go for interest only is mainly investors who would do that, because in their mind, their tenants are going to be the ones paying off this interest for over the 25 years or however long it is. And then at the end, they're gonna more often than not, the property price would have gone up by that point. So they might just sell all their properties at the end or pass all the properties down. But whatever it is, there will be some money or equity, which we'll talk about as we go on, which will be in the property, which will then allow them to be able to pay off that mortgage and still have some money left over. But at the time, the only thing that they're interested in is the cash flow. So they want to keep their costs down and keep the rent up, okay? And then the final thing to know really just around mortgages is, I mentioned already, I think, that you get the best deals from the major banks, but you actually get the best deals through a broker who has access to the major banks, which is quite a new thing. It never really used to be like that. But in the last couple of years, the brokers seem to get better deals than the banks themselves. So a mortgage broker, I'm making an assumption that you know what that is, but a mortgage broker is essentially somebody who can source mortgages for you. So a person who will go out and source mortgages, almost like an independent financial advisor.
I'm Ria, and what I'm holding in my hand right now is our Inside Success UK magazine, which you should go and buy. Also follow our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube, like all of our videos, comment, share, do everything you can.